Welcome to Insights into History, a podcast where we explore the edges of the past, not the greatest hits version, not just the headlines, the famous faces, the dates everybody memorizes and then forgets. This podcast is about the parts of history that are less talked about, but still matter just as much. The overlooked pieces that quietly shape everything around them. This is Season 1, Episode 1, and it's a simple opener before we jump into the good stuff. Think of this as the moment where I tell you what you're about to hear and what you are definitely not signing up for. First, expectations. This is not a college lecture. There won't be quizzes. There's no homework. And I am not going to surprise you with a 20-page essay due on Friday. Second, transparency. I'm not an accredited scholar, and I'm not a professional historian. My day job has lived in the world of technology and management. But history has been one of my longest-running obsessions. I've spent years chasing it down as a dedicated student. Reading, listening, watching, visiting museums, digging into archives, and yes, falling into online rabbit holes that start with one question and somehow end 3 hours later with 17 tabs open. And over time, I started to notice something, a pattern that shows up almost everywhere you find history being told. Most of the time, history gets packaged like a highlight reel. Big names, big battles, big turning points. A clean storyline that fits in a textbook chapter or a 10-minute video, or a museum plaque you read while you're already halfway to the next room. But the deeper you go, the more you realize the famous version is often just the surface, and under it is where the real story lives. The supporting characters who never got top billing, the overlooked locations that were crucial for a moment and then vanish from memory, the forgotten artifacts that look ordinary until you learn what they've seen, the smaller events that seem minor at the time, but end up steering much bigger outcomes. That's what this show is about. Not obscure history as trivia. Not weird facts just to sound clever at a party. This is overlooked history. History that matters. History that connects. History that changes the way you understand the better-known version of events. Let me give you a sense of what I mean with an example that'll show up this season. The Resolute desk. Most people recognize it immediately. It's the desk in the Oval Office. American presidents have worked at it. It's photographed constantly. It's a symbol of the modern presidency, the kind of object that feels permanent, like it was always there and always will be. But here's the question I want you to carry into this show. How often do we see something familiar and assume its story must be simple? Because the truth is, that desk doesn't begin in the White House. It doesn't even begin in the United States. Its story reaches back into the 19th century, into the frozen world of Arctic exploration, into international politics, into pride and rivalry and public pressure, into the kind of tense, uncertain era where nations were trying to prove something about themselves. And the chain of events that follows is the kind of thing history loves to do. One decision triggers another and then another. And before you know it, something that used to be part of a ship becomes a political gift. And then later, the same object becomes a symbol that keeps resurfacing during moments when symbols matter most. So yes, it's a famous piece of furniture, but it's also a doorway. And once you walk through, the room on the other side is bigger than you expected. That is the heart of what I want this show to do. We'll start with something you think you know, something you've heard of, something you've seen in pictures. And then we'll pull back the curtain and go looking for the fuller story underneath. The version that's stranger, richer, and more human. Now, a quick roadmap for Season 1. Season 1 is a limited run. 8 main topics. And the range is intentional. We're not going to camp out in one century or stay glued to one war or build every episode around a single theme. Instead, every episode will be guided by one question. What is the deeper story people tend to miss? And why does it matter? Here's what's coming. In the episodes called The Resolute, we track the desk back to the ship it's named for, and then follow the world that shaped that ship's fate. Arctic exploration, international tension, the kind of high-stakes ambition that looks heroic from far away and terrifying up close. In Delaware Defenders, we head into the American Revolution, but not the usual highlight reel scenes. We focus on lesser-known battles and events, the kind that rarely make the short list in classrooms, but still push the larger story forward and help shape the final outcome. In The Fugue, We go to Warminster, Pennsylvania, and dig into a facility with deep ties to aviation development and America's drive into the space age. And along the way, we ask something I find both fascinating and a little unsettling. How does a place with an enormous impact end up fading from public memory? In Dewey's Olympia, we shift into naval history and follow a ship with a long, remarkable career, one that crosses paths with major moments in United States military history. In America's Flagship, we tell the story of a legendary ocean liner, the speed, the status, the cultural footprint, and then the part people tend not to talk about as much. What happens after the spotlight moves on? In The Indian King, we step into a Revolutionary-era tavern. On paper, it sounds almost quaint, but its role in local and national history is anything but small. Some buildings are like that. They stand there quietly while the world changes inside them. In the Peter Ma House episode, we talk about slavery in the northern states and the history of a black community in New Jersey. We look at the networks, the people, and the realities behind what we often compress into a single phrase. And yes, we'll also explore connections to the Underground Railroad and the systems that made escape and survival possible. And in SS Atlantis, we go to the southern tip of New Jersey, out to a crumbling relic offshore. It's the kind of thing you can see and think, that's interesting, and then keep driving. But behind it is a World War I story. And once you know it, that wreck stops being scenery and starts being evidence. Those are the main stops this season. 8 topics, each one a thread. And each thread, if you pull it, leads into a wider tapestry. So why these stories? Why this lineup? Honestly, I picked many of these topics for a personal reason. A lot of them are local to me. They're objects and places I heard about growing up, names that floated around in the background of school trips, family drives, casual conversations. I knew they existed, but I never really understood them. And over the years, that started to bother me. This podcast is my way of finally doing the work. Going back to sources, reading carefully, checking claims, chasing details. Try to assemble the full narrative instead of settling for the shortcut version. But I'm not doing it only for myself. The hope here is to make something entertaining and useful. A good story, sure. Also a clearer sense of how history actually works. Because history is messy. It's connected. It's sometimes accidental. It's often misunderstood. And more a story gets overlooked, the easier it becomes to lose entirely. Not because anyone planned to erase it. Sometimes it just slips away, one forgotten detail at a time. Before we wrap this introduction up, I want to tell you how you can support the show. And no, this isn't a sales pitch. I'm not here to beg for likes or subscriptions. I'm not going to push products at you. There isn't a Patreon asking you for money. What I'm actually looking for is something much more valuable for a new show: your feedback. If this season connects with people, I'd love to keep going with future seasons in the same spirit and format. And I'm already imagining what season 2 could look like. A shift towards significant but lesser-known historical figures. People who shaped events without becoming household names. The kind of individuals you don't see on the Mount Rushmore of public memory, even though their fingerprints are all over the story. And I would really love your input on that, or on anything you think deserves a deeper look. If you have feedback, suggestions, or a story you want to chase, email me at comments@insightsintothings.com. Again, that's comments@insightsintothings.com. Or you can call 856-403-8788. That's 856-403-8788. Leave a voicemail. And if you want, we can even include your message in a future episode. One more time, the number is 856-403-8788. Thanks for listening. And truly, welcome to Insights into History.